The courage to be disliked. Want true happiness? Stop seeking approval. Written by Ichiro Kishimi, published by Audiobook Zone. Introduction. The courage to be disliked is a powerful exploration of how to break free from the constraints that limit our happiness and potential. What if the secret to true freedom and happiness isn't about gaining approval, but in the courage to be disliked? Imagine being told that everything you've been taught about success, happiness, and relationships may be holding you back. What if the key to living a more fulfilling life was simply choosing to embrace your true self, even if it meant being disliked by others? This book challenges conventional wisdom and invites readers to question their beliefs about self-worth, societal expectations, and the need for validation. Through a series of engaging dialogues between a philosopher and a young man, Kishimi introduces the principles of Adlerian psychology, which emphasize personal responsibility, the courage to be authentic, and the importance of living in the present. Whether you're struggling with the weight of others' expectations, battling feelings of inadequacy, or just seeking more peace and freedom, the courage to be disliked offers a refreshing perspective that empowers you to take control of your own life. Prepare to let go of limiting beliefs and embark on a journey toward a more authentic, courageous, and meaningful existence. The first night, deny trauma. What if you could free yourself from the chains of your past? What if the struggles you've faced, the traumas you've experienced, didn't have to determine your future? In The Courage to be Disliked, this radical idea is at the heart of the first night's conversation. In The First Night, Deny Trauma, the philosopher challenges the young man's deeply held belief that his past experiences, particularly traumatic ones, define who he is today. Through their dialogue, readers are invited to reconsider the role that past events, especially traumatic ones, play in shaping our emotional and psychological state. The philosopher argues that we are not prisoners of our past, and we hold the key to creating our own futures by how we choose to interpret those experiences. The core theme of The First Night is simple yet profound: your past trauma does not define who you are. The young man believes his difficult past has left an indelible mark on him, one that continues to shape his emotions, his behavior, and his self-worth. The philosopher, however, presents a different perspective. Trauma doesn't determine the course of your life, your interpretation of trauma does. The young man is initially resistant, struggling to understand that the pain of his past might not have the power he thinks it does. But through their conversation, the philosopher begins to help him see the bigger picture, one where he is not a victim of his experiences but an active participant in how he chooses to live. The story we tell ourselves. One of the most crucial points introduced in The First Night is the idea that trauma is not inherently harmful, it is how we respond to it that matters. The philosopher explains that it's not the traumatic event itself that defines us, but the meaning we attach to it. For example, a person may experience a painful breakup or the loss of a loved one. Many would naturally view such experiences as deeply painful and perhaps life-altering. However, the philosopher argues that these events only carry the weight we assign to them. If we continually tell ourselves that these events have ruined our lives or left us incapable of happiness, we're giving them power over us. But what if we reframe these events? What if we saw them as part of our journey, difficult, but ultimately surmountable, and that they do not control our future? This insight can be liberating. By recognizing that our pain is tied to how we interpret our experiences, we can change our emotional state. We are not slaves to our past. The philosopher encourages the young man to begin seeing himself as the architect of his own life, not the product of things that happened to him years ago. This is one of the first breakthroughs of the night, the realization that we have the power to shape our future, regardless of our past. The inferiority complex and how it holds us back. The philosopher introduces another key concept, the inferiority complex. According to Adlerian psychology, many people suffer from feelings of inferiority because they compare themselves to others or measure their worth by external achievements. The young man, who believes his past struggles make him inferior to others, is confronted with the idea that these feelings of inadequacy are not born from an objective reality but from his own interpretation of his life. The philosopher tells him that many people harbor feelings of inferiority, but those feelings don't define their value as human beings. Instead, it is our choices, how we decide to respond to challenges and define ourselves, that shape our lives. The young man is initially baffled. How could something as simple as interpretation free him from his perceived limitations? It's so deeply ingrained in him to see his past as the reason for his emotional struggles. But the philosopher persists, explaining that the inferiority complex only holds power over us when we choose to believe in it. When we allow ourselves to measure our worth by external factors, like the opinions of others or past failures, we remain stuck. But by rejecting the notion that our value comes from external validation, we reclaim our sense of self-worth and begin to live more authentically. Breaking free from the victim mindset. A central message of the first night is the importance of rejecting the victim mentality. The young man, like so many others, sees himself as a victim of his past. He believes that the challenges he faced, the emotional wounds he carries, and the suffering he's endured are what define him. But the philosopher argues that this perspective is not only limiting, it's also untrue. While it's natural to be affected by life's hardships, allowing those experiences to control your identity keeps you trapped. Being a victim means allowing your past to have control over your present and future. To truly live freely, one must reject the victim mentality and take ownership of their life, recognizing that they have the power to choose how they respond to their experiences. The philosopher explains that by taking responsibility for our own lives, we also take the responsibility to choose how we interpret our past. This doesn't mean ignoring or suppressing the pain we've experienced, it means refusing to let that pain define us. We have the power to create new meaning from those experiences, to see them as opportunities for growth, and to move forward without being held back by them. The power of reframing. One of the most profound lessons of the first night is the importance of reframing our experiences. The philosopher emphasizes that reframing is not about pretending that our past didn't happen or minimizing the impact it had on us. It's about choosing to look at our life experiences through a different lens, one that empowers us rather than diminishes us. If we continually view our struggles as reasons for our emotional suffering, we remain trapped. But if we can change the narrative, we free ourselves. For example, the young man is encouraged to see his past not as a series of unfortunate events that have doomed him but as a series of lessons that have shaped his unique perspective. He may have experienced pain, but that pain doesn't have to control his happiness. In fact, it could be seen as a stepping stone toward becoming a stronger, more resilient person. This reframing process is central to Adlerian psychology, and it's a powerful tool for anyone seeking to break free from the weight of their past. The freedom to choose. In the first night, Deny Trauma, the philosopher's most powerful message is that we are the architects of our own lives. We are not defined by our past, and we don't have to remain stuck in the roles we've assigned ourselves. The past is just that, the past. What matters now is how we choose to live and how we choose to see ourselves. By accepting that we have the power to change our interpretation of past events, we gain the freedom to create a future that aligns with our true desires and values. As the conversation draws to a close, the young man begins to grasp the radical implications of what he's learned. He can change his life by changing his mindset. The past is behind him, and it no longer has to control his future. This realization, though just the beginning of their journey, sparks a sense of hope in him. But the philosopher assures him that this is only the start of a deeper understanding of how we can master our lives. And so, the first night ends, but the adventure is far from over. As the young man moves toward embracing the courage to change, the philosopher promises that the coming nights will reveal even more profound insights into how we can live freely, authentically, and without fear of judgment. The first night has planted the seeds of transformation. What will the next step bring? Second night, all problems are interpersonal relationship problems. What if we told you that the key to overcoming your deepest struggles lies not in changing your environment or circumstances, but in transforming the way you approach your relationships with others? This is the powerful insight revealed in the second night of the courage to be disliked. Here, the philosopher argues that all of our problems, whether anxiety, dissatisfaction, or conflict, are rooted in our interpersonal relationships. What's more, how we handle those relationships determines the quality of our lives. This bold claim shifts the focus away from external factors and invites readers to examine the true sources of their emotional pain, their connections with others. Interpersonal relationships as the root of all problems. In the second night, the young man continues his conversation with the philosopher, but this time the focus shifts to a revolutionary idea: every problem you face in life is essentially a problem of interpersonal relationships. The young man is puzzled. He's always thought that his struggles, whether it's career setbacks, emotional issues, or family tensions, were unique to him, stemming from external factors or personal shortcomings. But the philosopher offers a new perspective: most of these struggles are not just about isolated, internal issues. They reflect the way we relate to those around us, family, friends, colleagues, and even society at large. The philosopher's assertion can be unsettling because it suggests that we are not helpless victims of our circumstances. Instead, how we approach, interpret, and react to other people plays a far greater role in shaping our emotional state. It's not about blaming others for our problems, but rather recognizing how our relationships affect us, and taking responsibility for how we engage with the people in our lives. The concept of separation of tasks. One of the most critical ideas introduced in the second night is the concept of the separation of tasks. The philosopher teaches that every person has their own tasks to handle, tasks related to work, family, or personal growth. The key to healthy relationships and emotional well-being is to understand that each person is responsible for their own tasks, while we are responsible for our own. The problems arise when we try to take on others' tasks, or when we try to make other people handle our tasks for us. The young man struggles to understand this idea, especially when it comes to relationships with people he cares about. He feels the need to control or change others, to make them see things his way, to avoid conflict, and to ensure that others like him. However, the philosopher helps him realize that when we try to control or influence others' tasks, we end up taking on unnecessary burdens that don't belong to us. These emotional struggles, such as seeking approval or fearing rejection, are the result of stepping into someone else's task. For example, in a workplace setting, a person may feel anxiety about a boss's approval, constantly worrying about meeting expectations. This is not their task, it is the boss's task to have expectations. In the same way, the burden of others' opinions or judgments is not ours to carry. By separating our tasks from others' tasks, we liberate ourselves from emotional turmoil and begin to live with a greater sense of autonomy. The struggle for recognition and the desire to be liked. A significant aspect of interpersonal relationships, and a central theme in this chapter, is the desire to be recognized and liked by others. The philosopher explains that our desire for recognition is one of the greatest causes of emotional distress. The young man is initially reluctant to accept this claim, as he believes that recognition and approval are essential for a person's well-being. But the philosopher makes it clear that seeking external validation can be a trap that keeps us trapped in insecurity and self-doubt. When we live with the goal of pleasing others or gaining their approval, we are essentially sacrificing our true selves in exchange for a facade. We end up pretending to be someone we're not, hiding our true feelings, and living in a state of constant anxiety, worried about what others think of us. The philosopher emphasizes that real freedom comes from living authentically, free from the need to win others' approval or admiration. The courage to be disliked. A pivotal insight that the philosopher offers is the courage to be disliked. This concept is often misunderstood because it sounds counterintuitive. How can being disliked be a path to happiness? The answer lies in understanding that we cannot control how others feel about us. It's impossible to please everyone, and trying to do so only leads to emotional exhaustion and frustration. The philosopher argues that living for ourselves, according to our values and principles, is far more rewarding than seeking the approval of others. While we may face criticism or rejection, it's only by embracing the possibility of being disliked that we truly find freedom. This is one of the hardest ideas for the young man to grasp, as he has always sought to be liked by others. However, the philosopher explains that true liberation comes when we stop trying to conform to others' expectations and instead live a life aligned with our own beliefs and desires. The power of contribution to others. Despite the emphasis on self-authenticity and freedom, the philosopher also stresses that meaningful, fulfilling relationships are built on mutual contribution. The secret to healthy relationships lies not in seeking validation, but in contributing to others without expecting anything in return. This concept is often referred to as contribution to others, and it's a crucial aspect of building meaningful connections. When we contribute to the lives of others, whether it's through kindness, support, or understanding, we move beyond our own ego and self-interest. This is the essence of true social interest, a key concept in Adlerian psychology, which suggests that personal growth and happiness are achieved when we focus not on personal gain, but on contributing to the well-being of others. The courage to live without approval. As the night's conversation continues, the young man begins to understand that much of his emotional struggle stems from his desire to be liked and validated by others. This realization is both liberating and challenging. The philosopher encourages him to cultivate the courage to live without the need for approval, to stop measuring his worth by others' standards, and to embrace a life that is guided by his own inner compass. By focusing less on pleasing others and more on being true to himself, the young man begins to see that he can be happier and more peaceful. As he lets go of his obsession with external validation, he begins to experience greater freedom, emotional stability, and fulfillment. Conclusion: the path to authentic relationships. By the end of the second night, the young man has come to understand a life-changing truth: all problems, whether emotional, professional, or personal, can often be traced to how we engage with others. The more we focus on external approval and validation, the more we get caught up in stress and insecurity. But by understanding the separation of tasks, embracing the courage to be disliked, and contributing to others' lives without expectation, we begin to build healthier, more fulfilling relationships. As the philosopher hints, the journey toward true happiness and freedom has just begun, and it requires ongoing effort to live authentically and embrace the challenges of interpersonal relationships. What will the young man learn next? The third night, discard other people's tasks. In The Courage to be Disliked, Part 3, titled Discard Other People's Tasks, presents a key theme that helps the young man realize the importance of personal boundaries, self-responsibility, and letting go of unnecessary emotional burdens. In this section, the philosopher emphasizes that many of the emotional and psychological struggles we face stem from taking on the responsibilities of others. Through this enlightening conversation, the young man is encouraged to focus on his own life, duties, and happiness, and stop carrying the emotional weight of others. Letting go of other people's responsibilities. The philosopher asserts that one of the most significant sources of personal stress and unhappiness is the tendency to take on the tasks of others, believing that we are responsible for other people's emotions or actions. Whether it's worrying about a friend's problems, trying to meet the expectations of a parent, or taking on work-related burdens that aren't ours, we often let these external demands shape our lives. The central theme of this part of the book is that in order to live a fulfilling life, we must recognize what is our responsibility and what belongs to others. Only by separating ourselves from other people's tasks can we experience true freedom and peace of mind. The philosopher explains that while we can help others, we should not take over their tasks or assume responsibility for their problems. By doing so, we not only burden ourselves but also enable others to avoid taking responsibility for their own lives. Instead of worrying about or fixing others' problems, we need to focus on our own actions, emotions, and decisions, as this is the only part of life we truly control. Identifying other people's tasks. The concept of other people's tasks is central to the discussion. The philosopher defines these tasks as anything that is not your responsibility but something you feel compelled to address, such as managing other people's emotions or fulfilling their expectations. For example, when someone around us is angry or upset, we often feel the need to fix their emotions or apologize for things we haven't done. Similarly, when we try to meet societal expectations or please our parents, we are unnecessarily assuming responsibilities that do not belong to us. The core message here is that emotional freedom and peace come when we stop trying to please others or control their lives. Just as other people cannot and should not control our lives, we cannot take charge of theirs. Each individual is responsible for their own emotions, actions, and choices, and we must respect those boundaries, just as we should respect our own. The cost of taking on other people's tasks. Taking on other people's tasks may seem like a way to help or improve relationships, but in reality, it often results in resentment, emotional exhaustion, and loss of self-identity. The philosopher makes it clear that focusing on others' needs at the expense of our own leads to burnout. It leaves us frustrated, overwhelmed, and feeling like we are always giving without receiving. Moreover, it also undermines other people's sense of personal responsibility, as they come to rely on us to solve their problems. This part of the conversation illustrates that we cannot live authentically when we are constantly managing the expectations and emotions of others. It stifles personal growth, emotional well-being, and a sense of self. The philosopher encourages the young man to consider that by letting go of the tasks that belong to others, he can prioritize his own goals, desires, and emotional needs. The courage to set boundaries. One of the most powerful lessons in this part of the book is the importance of setting boundaries. Boundaries are not about shutting people out or being selfish, but about preserving our own mental health and sense of identity. The philosopher emphasizes that setting boundaries allows us to say no to things that don't align with our personal values or goals, which in turn gives us more time and energy for our own tasks and personal development. Learning to say no can be difficult, especially if we have been conditioned to constantly help others or seek their approval. However, the philosopher challenges this notion and explains that when we say no to others' tasks, we are saying yes to our own life and happiness. Saying no is an act of courage because it requires us to acknowledge our own needs and desires without feeling guilty. The impact of rejecting other people's tasks. When we discard the tasks that belong to others, we begin to experience a sense of freedom and emotional clarity. The philosopher points out that our lives become lighter when we stop taking on unnecessary burdens. We are no longer bogged down by the need to meet external expectations or to fix other people's problems. This newfound freedom allows us to become more focused on our own journey and less reactive to the emotions and issues of others. Furthermore, this change in perspective helps improve our relationships with others. Rather than trying to be everything to everyone, we can engage with others authentically, without the underlying pressure to please or manage their emotions. Relationships become more honest and balanced when both individuals take responsibility for their own tasks. Living with true freedom. As the young man absorbs this new wisdom, he begins to realize that true freedom comes from taking full responsibility for his own life and rejecting the burden of other people's tasks. He understands that he does not have to carry the weight of others' emotions or adjust his life according to their expectations. Instead, he is free to live in accordance with his own values, pursuing the goals and relationships that truly matter to him. The philosopher concludes this part by encouraging the young man to embrace his newfound courage to let go of the unspoken tasks that he has been carrying. This act of shedding the weight of others' demands is a transformative step toward living a life of self-responsibility and emotional freedom. As the philosopher hints, the journey toward true happiness and freedom has just begun, and it requires ongoing effort to live authentically and embrace the challenges of interpersonal relationships. What will the young man learn next? The fourth night, where the center of the world is. In the fourth night of the courage to be disliked, the philosopher leads the young man to a pivotal realization: the center of the world is not out there, it's within us. This part delves into the concept of individual freedom and how we place too much emphasis on the external world, blaming it for our suffering and frustrations. The central theme revolves around the idea that we have the power to choose our own lives, and the world does not revolve around our perceptions of others or their judgments of us. The central theme of this part of the book can be summarized as, we are the creators of our own reality. The philosopher argues that the way we view the world around us, and the way we let others dictate how we feel, holds us back from achieving true happiness. By placing the center of the world outside ourselves, we live in a state of dependency on others' opinions, desires, and judgments. However, true freedom and personal power come when we take responsibility for our own perceptions and understand that we have the ability to shape our own experiences. A shocking revelation: the world doesn't revolve around you, and that's liberating. The young man, who has been grappling with his own fears and frustrations, is surprised by the philosopher's bold statement: the world does not revolve around you. This revelation, at first jarring, soon becomes liberating. The philosopher explains that most people live as if their lives are defined by others' expectations or judgments. Society, relationships, and even work seem to push and pull individuals in directions that feel out of their control. However, the truth is, the world does not have a center other than the way we define it for ourselves. This statement encourages the reader to start looking inward to reclaim power over their own life. The power of perspective, owning your reality. One of the key lessons in this part is about perspective. The philosopher tells the young man that much of the emotional suffering people experience comes from their dependence on the perceptions of others. When we try to please others, when we worry about how others see us, or when we strive to meet external expectations, we are giving away our power. Instead of depending on the judgments of others, we can choose to create our own values and live according to them. The philosopher uses a metaphor to explain: imagine being at the center of a great stage, where everyone is watching your performance. Instead of feeling the need to perform for an audience, you can step away from that role and live authentically, without needing approval. This metaphor serves to illustrate how we can take back control by stepping out of the role society expects us to play and recognizing that we have the choice to be ourselves. The consequences of living for others' expectations. As the philosopher explains, when we live our lives according to the expectations of others, we diminish our own sense of self. In this chapter, the idea is presented that many of our anxieties, doubts, and fears come from the idea that we must conform to the wishes of others. The pressure to please, to live up to others' standards, and to seek external validation stifles our ability to express who we truly are. The philosopher encourages the young man, and by extension, the reader, to begin rejecting these external pressures. By doing so, we can stop holding on to the need for constant approval. We are free to live authentically, even if it means breaking away from the expectations that have been placed on us by family, peers, or society. The message here is clear: you are the author of your own life story. Key concepts: task of others, and the freedom of self-definition. One of the core ideas explored in this part is the idea of the task of others, which the philosopher introduced earlier in the book. The young man realizes that so much of his suffering is rooted in his constant efforts to fulfill the tasks that belong to others, their desires, judgments, and expectations. In this section, the philosopher encourages him to break free from this pattern and focus solely on his own tasks, what belongs to him and no one else. By letting go of the need to fulfill others' expectations, we are not only freeing ourselves, but also allowing others to take responsibility for their own lives and their own choices. This shift in mindset allows the young man to see his relationships in a new light, as he no longer feels burdened by the need to fix or control others. The courage to live authentically. One of the most significant lessons here is that living authentically requires courage. The philosopher explains that breaking free from societal norms and the pressures of external expectations is not easy, but it is necessary for personal growth. The courage to be disliked, a theme echoed throughout the book, is crucial in this context. It means accepting that you cannot please everyone, and that's okay. In fact, it's more than okay, it's necessary for your personal freedom and emotional well-being. By choosing to live in accordance with our true values, we may face criticism or disapproval from others, but this disapproval no longer has the power to control our sense of self-worth. Instead of seeking external validation, the young man learns to validate his own choices and actions based on his internal beliefs and goals. What the reader gains: personal empowerment and emotional freedom. By the end of this section, the reader is encouraged to reflect on their own life and the extent to which they have allowed external influences to shape their experiences. The courage to be disliked teaches us that we don't need to live for others, we can live for ourselves. The world doesn't revolve around what others think of us. This realization frees us from the shackles of societal pressure and allows us to pursue a life filled with purpose and authenticity. This part of the book serves as an empowering reminder that true freedom comes from living with self-determination and courage. It teaches that we are not the sum of others' opinions but the creators of our own life experiences. The fifth night, to live in earnest in the here and now. In The Courage to be Disliked, the fifth night centers on one of the most profound lessons in the book, the importance of living earnestly in the present moment. The philosopher emphasizes that many of the problems we face stem from our inability to live authentically and with purpose in the here and now. In this part, the central theme focuses on the necessity of fully embracing the present, rather than being burdened by past regrets or future anxieties. By doing so, we can lead more fulfilling and purposeful lives. Highlight the main theme. The central theme of this part of the book is that to live a truly fulfilling life, one must embrace the present moment. The philosopher explains that many people get trapped in the past, carrying the weight of past mistakes or missed opportunities. Others become obsessed with the future, living in constant worry or striving for unattainable goals. However, true freedom and happiness come from focusing on the present and accepting our lives as they are, without trying to change what has already happened or obsess over what might be. The key to unlocking this freedom is the ability to live in earnest and to take full responsibility for how we choose to live right now. A startling realization, the power of the present moment. The young man is struck by the philosopher's assertion that the present moment is the only time we truly have. While it may seem like an obvious idea, the young man quickly realizes that he often lives his life either looking backward or forward, never truly engaging with the here and now. The philosopher explains that people often spend so much time regretting past actions or worrying about the future that they neglect the power of the present. The idea that we can make a difference today, in the current moment, is a powerful shift in mindset that opens the door to true personal growth and fulfillment. The danger of dwelling in the past. The philosopher discusses how many people get stuck in the past, either by holding on to past traumas, failures, or regrets, or by clinging to the idea of what could have been. He argues that while the past can shape us, it does not define us. Our past actions, mistakes, or experiences are not things we need to continually carry with us. If we focus too much on past events, we waste the opportunity to live fully in the present. The young man learns that it's important to release the grip on past memories that hinder progress and instead focus on how we can act in the present to shape our future. The futility of obsessing over the future. On the flip side, the philosopher also warns against becoming overly fixated on the future. The constant desire to achieve something in the future or worry about what might happen can cause anxiety, indecision, and a feeling of perpetual dissatisfaction. The philosopher explains that much of our emotional suffering stems from a fear of what the future holds. Rather than living authentically and fully in the present, many people are trapped in an endless cycle of ambition, hoping that future success or achievements will bring happiness and fulfillment. However, as the philosopher points out, the future is uncertain and uncontrollable, and constantly focusing on it robs us of the joy that the present can offer. The courage to live in the here and now. To live earnestly in the present requires courage. The philosopher emphasizes that living in the moment doesn't mean being passive or resigned, it means actively engaging with life as it is right now. This involves letting go of the need to control everything and accepting that we can't change the past or predict the future. The young man learns that living with authenticity requires making decisions that align with his true values, without being influenced by what others expect of him or by what has happened in the past. It's about taking responsibility for the present moment and making the most of it. Key concepts: freedom and responsibility. One of the core concepts in this section is the relationship between freedom and responsibility. The philosopher explains that true freedom comes when we take full responsibility for our present lives. When we embrace the present moment, we also acknowledge our own power to act, change, and make choices. It's not about waiting for the right time or for external circumstances to align, it's about taking responsibility for the here and now and living in a way that is true to our authentic selves. This responsibility isn't burdensome, it's liberating, because it allows us to take control over how we respond to our circumstances and make conscious choices that reflect who we truly are. The role of courage in living earnestly. Courage plays a pivotal role in this chapter. The philosopher encourages the young man to face his fears and step into the unknown, rather than waiting for the ideal conditions. Living in earnest means taking risks, making choices without certainty of the outcome, and facing the discomfort that comes with stepping outside of our comfort zones. The young man is reminded that courage is not the absence of fear, but the willingness to act despite fear. Living fully in the present moment often requires us to confront our anxieties and uncertainties, but it's only through this process that we can grow and experience the richness of life. What the reader gains, the importance of self-acceptance. For the reader, this section offers valuable lessons on self-acceptance and the importance of focusing on the present. By embracing the concept of living in earnest, we can find peace and fulfillment in our everyday actions. The message here is clear: to live authentically, we must stop chasing after a perfect past or future and instead commit to living fully in the present. When we do this, we unlock the potential for a deeper, more meaningful life. The impact of living now on our relationships. The philosopher also explores how living in earnest in the here and now can improve our relationships with others. When we are no longer preoccupied with the past or future, we become more available and present with the people around us. We stop living for their approval or expectations, and instead, we interact with them as they are, in the present moment. This allows for more genuine, authentic connections, where both individuals are free to be themselves, without the burden of trying to control or change each other. Conclusion. The Courage to be Disliked offers readers a transformative approach to life that challenges societal norms and encourages deep personal growth. By embracing the ideas presented in this book, we are empowered to break free from the constant need for external validation, stop carrying the weight of other people's expectations, and start living authentically. The book emphasizes that true happiness and emotional freedom come from taking responsibility for our own lives, letting go of past traumas, and living in the present moment. The philosopher's conversations with the young man provide invaluable insights into the power of choice, the importance of boundaries, and the courage to be disliked as a path to true freedom. What makes this book so impactful is its invitation to examine our thoughts and behaviors critically. It asks us to question how much of our stress, unhappiness, and dissatisfaction stems from trying to please others or from taking on responsibilities that are not ours. By shifting our focus from others to ourselves and recognizing that our worth is not defined by how others perceive us, we begin to free ourselves from unnecessary emotional burdens. In conclusion, The Courage to be Disliked is not just a book, it's a call to action. It encourages readers to take the leap toward greater self-awareness, emotional clarity, and a life based on their own values and goals. By embracing the courage to be disliked, we can finally discover what it means to live in earnest, free from the constraints of past experiences and societal pressures. This is a life-changing philosophy that can transform the way we approach relationships, work, and most importantly, ourselves.